Hello and welcome to my YouTube. This YouTube is titled Add Voices to the E463 keyboard using QSF files. The Yamaha PSR E463 keyboard comes with 758 built-in voices, and you cannot add any new voices to the keyboard. However, you can play a voice using sampling, which is not easy to do correctly, and it's complicated. I have published a YouTube 2 years ago that explains how to record a sample voice and play it on the E463 keyboard, if you want to go and do that. This YouTube is another easier way to add sample voices into the E463 keyboard that doesn't require you to record the samples yourself, because that's the hard part, is recording the samples correctly and then getting them into the keyboard. That's tricky. You can play new voices in the E463 using something called a QSF file, loaded in from a USB thumb drive. What is a QSF file? Let's start with the definition. It is a quick sample file, QSF. What's that? Yamaha uses the proprietary file format QSF to save voice samples onto a USB thumb drive. So this is something that Yamaha came up. They've designed this. They created this. They invented QSF files. And its sole purpose is to allow people to store these sample recordings, these sample voices, out on a thumb drive. In this YouTube, I'll show you how to load QSF files off of a USB thumb drive and insert them into the E463 keyboard and play them as a main voice. I will also explain how you can download 11 QSF files from my online box. Let's start with the steps necessary to load a QSF files off of a USB thumb drive and play it as one of your E463 main voices. Step 1. Load the QSF files onto a USB thumb drive. Now, they cannot be in a folder. When you put them on the thumb drive, they must be on what's called the root. That means nothing else can be on that thumb drive except these QSF files, and they cannot be inside a folder. Now, I have an iPhone, and I could load them off of my iPhone into a thumb drive. I also have a Mac, and I could load them off of a Mac into the thumb drive. But this is where they need to end up. These QSF files must be stored on a thumb drive. Step 2. Insert the thumb drive into the E463 USB connection on the back of the keyboard. Now, it may take anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds for the keyboard to recognize the thumb drive. You have to be patient. What you can't do is plug it in, walk around to the front of the keyboard, and expect to immediately, instantly go into the thumb drive to find the QSF files. If you do, it says can't find the files, and it'll sit there and say that for about a half a minute or so. So it takes just a little bit of time for the keyboard to recognize and to go in and see exactly what is stored on that thumb drive. Just be patient for a moment. Step 3, press and hold the function button, and then select this, Load SMPL, and you'll use these category buttons to cycle. There's about 10 different things that can come up when you press and hold the function button. You are going into a section where it allows you to do things with the thumb drive. This takes you out into the thumb drive. So this is how we're going to get to the thumb drive. Press and hold the function and use these category buttons to cycle through until you come up with this, Load SMPL, load the sample. This means we're going to go into that thumb drive and load a QSF file. Step 4, press the Execute button to select the Load SMPL. Okay, and that's this button right here. Step 5, when the press key message appears on the screen, so after you press execute, this is what you're going to see, press key. When you see this message, reach out and press the middle C key on the keyboard. Okay? So when it says press key, you press middle C. Step 6. Use the rotary wheel to select which one of the QSF files you want to load into your keyboard. They are stored alphabetically on the thumb drive. So you'll use this wheel and you will cycle through and you will be looking at the names of all of the QSF files that you've got. I've made a little video to show you what it looks like, so watch this. The first one is called Andromeda. I named these after planets and stars. Callisto, Europa, Jupiter, Libra, Mars, Mercury, Neptune, Orion, Polaris, Saturn, Sirius, Taurus, Venus, Virgo, and then it cycles back. So you're using the rotary wheel and you will cycle through and you will look at the names of the QSF files. And you just stop dialing when you find the one that you want. Okay, that's step 6. Step 7, press the execute button to begin installing the QSF file you have selected. So in this example, I want to load in a QSF file called Polaris. So I'm looking at Polaris on the screen and I come over here and I press the execute button saying, go get this Polaris file on my thumb drive and load that into my keyboard. Execute, that's the button that's going to make this happen. Step 8. When you press execute, this is what happens. Your screen suddenly says load OK? ? So when the load OK message appears on the screen, once again, press the execute button. So execute is a way of saying, yes, do that. Yes, do that. Do that. Execute. Okay? So it says load OK, press execute. Click. The keyboard will begin loading the QSF file and the screen will say loading. Now, how long does it take? Well, it depends on, how big is the QSF file. My experience on the 11 QSF files that I'm going to be showing you later, it takes about 15 seconds. Now that seems like a long time when you're just sitting there staring at the screen. So my answer is it could take anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds for your keyboard to load that QSF file off of the thumb drive and store it inside your keyboard. So you just have to sit here and watch the screen. So I say somewhere between 10 and 20 seconds typically. Step 9. The screen will briefly flash the message complete when the file is loaded. So sit there and just watch your screen. This doesn't stay up here only about 2 or 3 seconds, and then it goes away. So if you're not watching your screen, you'll miss it. Okay? Anyway, it tells you, I'm done. I have stored the QSF file off of the thumb drive and inserted it into your keyboard where you can get at it. That's step 10. Step 11. Now we're ready to go play it. So press the voice key, and using the rotary dial or the numeric pad, I always like to use the dial, you want to call up voice number 759. So your screen needs to look like this. Voice 759. This is the sample voice. Remember I told you your keyboard comes with 758 built-in voices? Fine. This is 759, one beyond that. But this is where your keyboard stores the sample file that we have just loaded in from the thumb drive. It will always be here. Voice number 759. You're done. You can now play the sampled voice with your right hand in the main voice of the keyboard. So from here on out, it's just like every one of the other 758 voices. You can add a split or a dual voice, or add in harmony or an arpeggio, and you can add digital signal processing, DSP, to the QSF sample voice you've just installed. So all of these buttons are now active. This sample voice is now just another main voice in your keyboard as far as you're concerned. Now this QSF sampled voice permanently stays in the keyboard until you replace it with a different QSF sample. So even though you turn off the keyboard and you walk away, and a week later you come back and you turn on your keyboard and you call up voice 759, that QSF sampled voice will be there. It stays there permanently until you overwrite it or install a new QSF sample voice. I have collected 11 QSF sample voices, and I've loaded them into my online box on the web. And you can go into my box and download them for free. I'll put the URL of my box in my comments below this video, so you can just click it to go directly into my box and download the QSF files. This is what the URL looks like. So I'm going to put this down below in my comments, and you just click on it and it will take you right into my box where you can download the 11 QSF files that I've put together for you for this video. Now I have named the 11 QSF files after the names of planets, constellations, and stars. Andromeda, Jupiter, Libra, Mercury, Neptune, Polaris, Saturn, Sirius, Taurus, Venus, Virgo. You know, I had to call them something, and I didn't want them to just be numbers. So it just helps you remember which one is which when you're listening to them in just a few moments. Okay? So I'm going to play these 11. I'm just playing 11 QSF samples in this YouTube, but I have found over 300 QSF files out on the web so far. I'm going to play 11 for you, but I've got 300. So let's go live to the E463 keyboard and listen to these 11 QSF sample voices. The first sample voice I'm going to demonstrate is called Andromeda, and it sounds like this. Now I'll play it in some music. I'm not going to play any actual songs, so I don't have to worry about copyright violations. I'm just making this all up spontaneously, just so you can have some idea of how you might use the voice in a real song. And since this is kind of a synthesizer sounding voice, I'm going to use a techno beat. The next sample voice is called Jupiter, and it sounds like this. And in a song, it could sound something like this. The next voice is called Libra, and it has a very organ-like sound to it, and it sounds like this. Okay, so let's hear it in a little song. This next sample voice is called Mercury, and it sounds like this. Okay, let's hear it in some kind of a song. Transpose a little bit. The next sample voice is called Neptune, and it sounds like this. Okay, and let's hear it in a little music. The next sample voice is called Polaris, and it sounds like this. Okay, let's hear a little music. The next sample voice is called Saturn, and it sounds like this. All right, and let's hear it in a little piece of music. The next sampled voice is called Venus, and it sounds like this. All right, let's hear it in a little piece of music. And the last sample voice is called Virgo, and it sounds like this. And let's hear it with a little music. Okay, that's the QSF quick sample files from Yamaha, and I've gone out onto the internet and I found 300 of these things, and I've downloaded them, put them into a USB thumb drive, and I pull them in one at a time into my keyboard. And once they're in here, then I can apply split, dual, harmony, arpeggio, and DSP. Just treat them like one of the other 758 voices. And this voice, that stays in there permanently. I turn off my keyboard, I walk away, I come back a year later, it's still there in voice number 759. That's where it's stored. And I can go on to the thumb drive and pull in a new voice at any time. So I hope you have found this interesting. More importantly to me, those of you that own this E463, I hope you found this helpful. And if you have, go make some music.